It is part of the purpose that I have in my own life, which is to work with people to help them develop all the different things that contribute to a successful time in this phase of their life as they approach retirement. So as I was thinking about, how to frame this today, I thought about using something that was near and dear to my heart, and that is cooking, because that is one of my personal hobbies and things that I do all the time. I'm surrounded by my cookbooks and my articles, and I think my partner is ready to uh, kill me with all the printed recipes that I have on top of the 1,000 cookbooks that I still own, that I keep on printing from the internet because I'm always inspired by the things that are out there. So we're going to talk about baking a cake in retirement and all the different parts that go into it. And purpose and values is they're the foundations for the kinds of things that we need to look at as we consider the pieces that we have in uh, our 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 hearts as we continue to think about what we want to do as we get older and try to make our time meaningful. So purpose and values, they provide the guidance for us as we make our choices. They always do, really. That's the thing that we should pay attention to, because they are the parts that ground us and give us a way to make decisions that are consistent with ourselves and what we really want. And oftentimes in life, part of the problems we have is opportunities present themselves and we say, oh, that sounds so cool. Let's try this. And we don't really think about how it might fit in the overall plan and purpose of our life. And so having guiding values and things that are important to you are ways to help us decide, does this fit for me? Is this something I should try out? Or is this just a cool thing and maybe it just isn't something that I should spend my time on? Sometimes saying no is just as important as saying yes to the things that come into our lives. So we need to explore in this phase of our life our new why. Why are we here? What is the purpose? What do we want to focus on? And those are the kinds of things that make it really important for us as we begin this journey of trying to figure out who we are now as we get older. And some of the milestones that we kind of put into our lives, or expectations that we had of us, are part of what we are dealing with. We sometimes, for some people, they might have had a partner. Sometimes you had a family. Sometimes you had a job. And not all those things, not all people have all those things, but some kinds of things that have comprised your world and your life are things that you have to begin to reevaluate and decide, well, what am I going to do about this now? Perhaps, my kids have finally graduated, and they might have graduated from high school and they're in college, or they might have graduated from college and they're no longer living in your house, or sometimes they're in your house, but you still have to decide what you want to do for yourself anyway. And these are the things that we are looking at, is what kind of guiding principles do we begin to explore and think about as we are looking at the kinds of things that we want to bring into our lives at this point. I think the biggest challenge for us is that we now have 30 years or so that we are now looking at for retirement, and we have no roadmap really to be able to do this in this day and age. No one ever expected to live as long as we are living now in our 90s and sometimes in their hundreds. My grandmother passed away at 103, and there are way more people in the 90s and hundreds living these days, especially if you've lived pretty healthily to 65. The chances that you living much another 10, 20, even 30 years is pretty significant. So all of a sudden, we've got all this extra time. Sometimes some people have a lot of money, some people have very little, but our happiness really doesn't necessarily depend on financial stability, even though that is certainly a piece that we all want to have in our life, is something there that we can count on. But I will tell you that, money does not bring happiness. It just brings some stability in your life. And that's important to be able to have some sort of basis, to be able to have stability so you can begin to plan for the future. And I have, the reason that I've talked about recipes and why it's important for our future and our happiness is, I think a good example is that food and people's likes and dislikes around certain things are very individual. They might have a favorite restaurant that they like to go to, but not everybody else likes that restaurant. Or you might have certain foods that you absolutely hate. Don't give me any cilantro. It is not on my list of loving, ingredients. And, part of the reason I got to be such a good cook is because I was such a picky eater. So for me, the idea of helping people really explore their future life as they grow older has been one of my personal missions that I have decided to spend my time with. And, every time I write my little blog about, introducing myself, I probably should go back and do this a little bit more now so that not everyone knows my background. So I'm a psychologist and I have been in practice for over 45 years. I'm also a coach. So my coaching practice is coachingagingadults.com, and my psychotherapy practice is now drkarenmidyet.com. It used to be Colorado Senior Counseling, but now I work with people all over the country. So I've kind of rebranded to be more national. But when my story is one where I, started with kids, then went to adolescents and adults, and then eventually closed my practice because I was burned out. I decided that I wanted to try something totally new that was not in the field of psychotherapy or coaching, and I did something totally different, which I still do, but it's really just a sideline for me. It's not my main work. It is something that I just kind of do part-time. But the piece that helped me figure that out is I began to think about what I was missing from the kinds of things that I got from my practice in psychotherapy. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of times people begin to figure out after they leave the world of work. Sometimes they do not realize the kinds of things that work has provided for people, and they just look at the end goal. The end goal is getting retired. I'm tired of this. I'm burned out. I hate having to get up and, go to work in the morning, or at least, that's the way it used to be, where you had to get out of bed and actually drive. Now these days, it's a little bit more flexible, depending on what people are doing. But the reality is, there was a lot of structure in your day and a lot of expectation about the things that you needed to do in the world of work. And sometimes we don't realize all the benefits that we get other than just the financial ones. So as we begin to, sometimes people look at coming into my psychotherapy practice because they're feeling miserable after they retire. And that actually is how I ended up beginning my practice with Coaching Aging Adults, because I was trying to prevent people coming into my psychotherapy practice who felt lost a loss of identity, they felt socially isolated. They didn't know what to do with their day or their time, and they were bored. And so a lot of them were coming in to see me in psychotherapy. And I said, well, we've got to start working on this. We need to start educating people about the fact that they need to do a lot of work, hopefully before retirement, so you can make sure you have things in your toolbox of things to do. And hobbies and volunteers are two of those things. There's way more than that. And when I realized I probably bit off a little bit more than I could chew today, because each one is really a section, but both of them, have a place for people because they function in the same way. One of the things that happens with both hobbies and with doing things that are volunteering is it gives you things to do. Obviously, it stimulates your brain and your thinking. If you're learning new behaviors, all of those are protective of your brain, and it also helps with social isolation, depending on what hobbies you do. I mean, some hobbies are more ones that you do in your home, and they're more solo, and other hobbies can be more like golf or playing tennis or doing things with a group that may be taking art classes, those kinds of things. So some hobbies, and again, if one of your goals is to expand your social connections, which you might have lost from the world of work, or which you will be losing when you leave work, then there are reasons beyond just activities for these things to be a part of your life. And exploring them and trying to figure out which are the ones that are meaningful for you is part of what this is all about today. So, when I was doing the research, I've been researching this for a while, and you never know what's going to come up. And in this world of, right now, everything is AI. So all this artificial intelligence stuff comes into my box, and people. So I was playing with something today because I'm one of those people who loves software. I'm not always very good at using software and new things, but I love software, and I love, I get excited about new learnings. And one of the things that came into my was an article on volunteering internationally, and also volunteering where you actually do things for others, but you actually pay to do it. I mean, so the organizations that are out there, they hire seniors to actually do this volunteer work. There is a paid price for it because somebody does all the back end stuff, but those kinds of volunteer opportunities internationally exist in other, not just for seniors. They do it, people throughout their life. But that was a whole area that I really hadn't even explored before. So, there's so much out there that we can begin to look at. And part of what I'm doing is preparing articles to be able to help us find better ways of exploring that, because many of the people who come into my practice are very narrow in what they look at, because they look at just their local community, and local communities have lots of great things, but it's still somewhat limited. So recently I was in a group of newcomers, because I just recently moved, and people were talking about all the different kinds of volunteer activities they were doing in my local area, some of which I had no idea even existed, but they had to do with areas that, exist in many places, and it's in the areas of the arts. So people who like to volunteer to be able to help people get seated to the theater. So that's one area. And any of the organizations that you might belong to, they may have a volunteer opportunity to them as well. So these are the kinds of things that you can begin to look at and explore and say, you know, what areas of interest do I have? Well, how do I usually spend my time? How did I spend my time before? You know, am I somebody who goes to art shows? You know, is there anything there that I might do? Because not everything is easily publicized. Another area to be able to go to is go to your, if you look both for your city, and the city oftentimes will have a volunteer section that you can find out about. So I would go to the city. I'd also go to your county and look at volunteer opportunities in your county. So that's a way for you to find things more locally. So those are things where you actually can be with people in your community and get to know more people in your community if you go into those areas. And they usually list everything from, you know, helping with animals to helping with nature and things in the gardens, or maybe being somebody who is doing a community garden, or it could be doing something like local food delivery. I mean, that's one that, you know, most people know about. Or helping in your local school, volunteering with kids, reading and helping in the classroom. Well, I don't know if it's volunteer being a bus driver, but I certainly know that is one that some people do. You know, I was talking with one of my clients the other day, and he said, yes, I figured out I could do, I don't know if it's volunteering or a job at Rocky Mountain National Park. They have people that take people around in those buses. And I know people have done that. They've done it at resorts. So there are lots of different places sometimes that you don't even think about that could be opportunities for you to do as a volunteer job, or sometimes even a part-time job if volunteering is not necessarily on your to-do list. I mean, part-time jobs are something that people do. Sometimes people start their own businesses because they said, okay, I'm done, but I've got all these skills, but I've got so much that I want to offer, and I have this idea. And, you know, and so now's my time to be able to do that idea. And so they may decide that they want to go in that direction. But for now, we're going to speak about the things in terms of purpose and values, and how that helps you narrow down the kinds of things that are important. Because part of what helps people when you talk with people about what it is that makes a difference in their life, they usually want to talk about finding something that they can do that's meaningful. And that's very different from everybody. For some people, it has to do with you know, working with underprivileged people. For other people, it is raising money for causes that are important to them. For some, it has to do with doing things with animals, because that's really part of what's in their heart. And all those things are, you know, sometimes it has to do with just learning and mastery. You know, I have some people who have decided they want to go back to school, and they actually get another degree. I mean, and you don't have to get a degree, but you also can go back to school. Many states offer free courses for older adults to take in programs. They, you know, I think to get a degree, you probably have to sign and pay for it. But if you want to just take courses, you certainly can take courses for free. And then there's the OLLI program that has lovely educational opportunities throughout the country. And they're usually attached to some university, and they're throughout the communities, and some of them are online, and they didn't all used to be online, but now they have a combination of online and in person. So, you know, education has really shifted a lot. It was beginning before the pandemic, but then it just exploded afterwards. So as long as you are computer somewhat savvy, or you have an iPad or some sort of tablet, you usually can find a way of taking classes. And of course, the educational explosion of courses is out there. You can take one on absolutely everything because everyone is coming up with ideas of things that they can teach. And I'm sure there's a variety of things that are out there that people are some are probably are better than others, but you can at least explore learning. So part of, if you realize that some of the purposes are behind all of this is it can decrease social isolation. When they looked at the what was the happiness scores for people who had looked at, I think the study was just recently, it's been a long-term study. I think it's been, I don't know, 70 or 80 years. They've been studying these people, and one of the things that they realized is that the regrets that people have is sometimes they spent too much time at work being just workers and not enough time really nurturing relationships. And so relationships are very protective for our mental health, our physical health, and our cognitive health. So that is, if you're not just looking at just not being bored, you're looking at really making your life be the best it can be moving forward and protecting yourself from getting depressed or getting dementia. Social connection is one of the research topics that consistently shows that we need to be able to have other people in our lives, even if it's just one-on-one. It doesn't have to be a big group. If you're an introvert, there are lots of different ways that you can also benefit from either hobbies or certain volunteer works. So me, I love reading. So, that's a pretty solo activity, but a lot of times people go and do a lot of work with book clubs. That is a way to be able to take your interest area, or even as a way to meet new people, and you can read. There's a lot of local and national charities that people can work in. There are foster grandparent programs that people can work in. There is mentoring or training of other young professionals. There's SCORE, which is a wonderful organization in the business world where there is mentoring of new businesses that are done, and that's a pretty good organization. And then, obviously people who have low mobility, there's issues with that. But, that is where there are still ways for you to get out, and there are oftentimes community buses that people can take to try to get you, or sometimes you make connections in your community so you can have somebody pick you up to be able to take you to something. And maybe the area of interest might be something related to your church. Or maybe it's the local library that you enjoy going to, and then you make connections and you go there. So if you consider that there are health benefits in addition to just enjoyment to doing some of these things, then you have another reason beyond anything else. Getting ourselves up and moving is the other really important thing that I always talk with people about. I don't care if you have to go to a class like Silver Sneakers in order to do that, or if some people are much more self-starters and they like to do all of their workouts at home. Me, I know if I'm left to my own devices, I just don't do it. I have to have that appointment, and I make it, and I spend the money to do it, because otherwise it just doesn't get done. So that's one of the other benefits of being older, is we kind of know who we are, what we're willing to do. Do not expect that you're going to change 150% just because you're retired. You're still basically the same person you've always been, but you want more guidance And now all of a sudden it's not coming externally from other people, it's coming internally from you. And that's why sometimes people need to do a lot of exploration to make that happen, because that could involve doing journaling so that you begin to know yourself a little bit more. That was a huge thing for me when I was 50, and at 50 I got a divorce, and it was a tough time. But that was a time of reinvention for me, but it was also a time of exploration. And it was part of what I did the journaling was part of what I did to really get in touch with myself and to try to figure out what I wanted to do. And that led me to begin to do the work that I eventually did with older adults down the road, and also to make sure that I spent the time that I had with my children as I could in those earlier years. So, I'm not going to get into the specifics of all the different hobbies and things. I'm going to be writing some articles, and when those articles come out, I'll put in a lot more of the links to things that are out there that people can look at. I do have a couple of books that I really, really enjoy that I will share with people, because they're typical ones that, one of the ones, this is the book that I wish I read, that I wrote. Maybe I'll write a book, but this is the one that I wish I wrote. And it's called Retirement Reinvention. May Your Next Act Be Your Best Act. And that is by Robin Ryan. And she's done a great job of giving great stories, of explaining to people when they go into retirement or they're planning for retirement, and really beginning to explore all the different options out there and how you can try things out. Some things that you try, even hobbies, end up being sometimes hobbies turn into jobs. Sometimes volunteer opportunities turn into job opportunities. And she talks about some of those here. And then she also talked about sometimes work that people need to do, or classes that people need to take if they want to, maybe they want to house sit for high net worth people and be a concierge service. I mean, there's some people who choose to do things like that in retirement, or other people decide they want to be they go to campgrounds and they're a campground leader, or they have volunteer opportunities in the parks and recreation, and they do things there, or they become they talk in art museums. So there's so many different ways that people do things, and some of them, do things more where they're helping out with people, homeless, people in shelters, food kitchens, soup kitchens, all sorts of different things like that. If people are interested in maybe having their own second act, Nancy Colomer, has a book, Second Act Careers, and it's 50 ways to profit from your passions during semi-retirement. And semi-retirement is also, it's kind of like what I'm doing. I'm really not retired, but I limit the amount of time that I work. So I only see clients 3 days a week. To me, 3 days is fun, 4 days is work. So I have found a way to be able to make what I'm doing as a coach and therapist something that is long lasting, so I don't get burned out. I think a lot of people get burned out from work. And so those first couple of years, that's, they're just happy to be done. They're happy not to to wake up and be out at a certain time of the day. And so since that's true, they end up, sometimes adjusting pretty well for the first 6 months, maybe to a year. And then they do some of their passion projects, and they do a few things that, I want to travel here, and now people can travel. I want to, get this project done, clean out the basement, all those different things. They get those done. And then all of a sudden, they've got way more time on their hands than they thought. And they also have done some recovery work, when you think about it, sometimes you have to recover from the work world. And as you begin to look at what you're going to do in the future, that's the time where exploration is most important. So if you would like to do exploration with me, feel free to give me a call. I do that through my coaching, and you can find me at Karen at coachingagingadults.com. And we could always set up a call and we can explore whether or not that's something you would like to do. And I'm going to be teaching some courses. One is designing my retirement. And then I have a couple of other courses on aging that I plan on getting going over the next couple of months. So please, I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, pass this on to other people. And we will be working on another talk for next month. And at this point, I'm not quite sure what that is. So we'll let you know as soon as I figure that out. Thanks so much. And I hope you have a good day and week.